What you're about to see is a diplomacy game where nobody was allowed to build. Not a single country on this board is ever allowed to build. And how did this game progress? I guess that's why this video exists in it. So in 1901, England and France bounced in the English Channel, and there was a lot of tension about this because England really wanted to get into the English Channel. But France throughout all this was just saying, no, I'm not going into the English Channel. Why would you be allowed to go into the English Channel? Down in the south, Italy wanted to open Piedmont because remember, he can't build and nobody can build. So France can't really get more units to defend themselves. So it worked out that Italy thought, okay, let me go into Piedmont. And he basically told everyone, okay, I'm going to go after France here. And so it leaked back to France. However, in Italy's void, he did say that he intentionally did this to stay on a low center count. Because remember, getting a new supply center beyond 3 doesn't really matter because you can't build. But then in fall, he just continued with the attack anyway. He went to Lyon and Piedmont, forcing the issue on Marseille here. England tried to support himself into English Channel, but at this point, there's a bit of a coalition forming because in the press, England's been quite abrasive with everyone, basically saying, okay, this is what I want. If you're not going to give it to me, I'm not going to work with you. Germany wanted to work with England, but at a certain point he just couldn't. Because England is the only power with 2 fleets. I mean, technically Russia has 2 fleets, but they're kind of on opposite sides of the board. So in effect, Russia has 2 single fleets. But England's the only power with fleets that can work together. And remember, nobody can get new fleets, so this is how it's going to be for the whole game. But when Germany asked them to kind of help them out with Russia, England refused to go to Norway, so in the end Germany didn't want to work with them anymore. So in the meantime here, Russia's going to Romania and going back into the Black Sea. Now you can see that Austria thought Russia was on their side. They had some talks about destroying this army because again, Turkey can't build, nobody can build. So they went back into the Black Sea and moved down into Romania with Turkish support. With the idea that he's going to move his fleet through Constantinople into the Aegean Sea and get into the Mediterranean. And Turkey was fine with this. They trusted Russia enough to let them walk through Constantinople. And so in the spring of 1902, that's exactly what happens. Turkey supports Black Sea into Constantinople. There's a lot of supports happening here. Turkey wanted Russia to attack Serbia. Austria wanted to kill Bulgaria. Because, I mean, it would have worked in this case. Black Sea to Constantinople, take out Bulgaria, Turkish army would be dead. But Russia preferred to work with Turkey in the end because also I think Austrian press was a lot less than Turkey. You can see with the Italy-France situation, it actually kind of resolves itself. So Italy leaves Piedmont, tries to convoy into Spain because I think he thought Spain was going to support. Instead, he walks out here and nothing ever happened. In the north, you see England and France are continuing to bounce in the English Channel. It's becoming a bit of a thing. Like our fleets are just stuck doing this. Come on, let's move on. Neither side was willing to budge. Russia walks into Norway as Germany suspected. And at this point, France, Germany and Russia are kind of working together to go, okay, look, England has 2 fleets and is not willing to work with any of us. So let's make sure they don't have 2 fleets anymore. And then maybe when England's on 1 fleet, they'll be more willing to work with us. So there's a coalition forming against England here. And so in fall, they push through into the North Sea. France continues to bounce in the English Channel, and so does England, because this gets cut support. Over here, Austria just kind of covers Vienna. Why is Italy here? Austria's a bit concerned about that. There was actually an agreement for Italy to go into Vienna, but I think they forgot to change their moves. So what ends up happening here is Russia tries to support into Vienna, and Italy just goes up into Bohemia. In the south, Bulgaria supports themselves into Constantinople, just to make sure Russia gets out, but Russia is moving out anyway into the Aegean Sea. Welcome to the bi-yearly, legally distinct Hall of Country Fame. Who's doing the best? Who's doing the worst? Who's in the best position to win at the moment? I think it's Russia, because Russia got relatively well defended borders where it matters and empty borders where it doesn't matter. So I think Russia should be at the top. I think second and third place are more questionable because you got Austria with quite a few centers, but they're currently being coalitioned by Russia and Turkey. You got Italy with units all over the place, but no like strong force anywhere specific. And you got Turkey, who they're not going to die anytime soon, but also they're not in a position to do anything. They're really reliant on Russia. If you look at Germany, they have an Italian unit on Munich, sure. But keep in mind, this is no build, so if they lose Munich, it's not the end of the world. And they can take Holland, and are not in any immediate risk of being attacked. So I'd put Germany on number 2 in spring 1902. By the end of 1902. So, for third place, it's a tough race between France, because France is getting attacked, but there's not much Italy can actually do to kill them. They're not in a position where they're dying, but they're also not in a position where they can do anything. I think I'd put Italy barely in number 3. They're not on the defense venue, in fact they're on the offensive, and it's kind of up to them what happens with France, so they have more like agency over the situation, because they can also go after Munich and such. Who's going to die? I think it's going to be either Austria or England, and I think Austria is in the slightly worse position because the coalition against them is actually like committed again. Like Turkey has nowhere else to go. Austria could technically turn this around and have Russia go after Turkey. I'd put England at the bottom here because they're going to lose Holland. There's not much they can negotiate to keep Holland. And Edinburgh is also vulnerable, so they have to deal with that. And they have the whole issue with the English Channel, so I'd probably put England on the pit of toxic waste. By the way, if you want to participate in any future variants which will be featured on this channel, then join the Discord server in the description because I will advertise all future variants I run over there first. Spring 1903, Italy finally takes that support into Vienna. I think now because Russia sent a message, I'll show it. Don't make me regret this, and Italy did not make him regret it. They take Vienna, Austria retreats to Budapest. Turkey comes to them with this plan where basically Russia will support him into Bulgaria and then fleet Aegean goes into Greece. Austria just simply can't defend both because they have to choose. Are we going to support all Bulgaria or are we going to block Greece? In the end, they chose let's cut Romania. Russia got into Greece in the end. At this point, France gets a change in leadership. And I heard the old French leader ran away because there was some weird revolution thing and the French leader ran and like was hiding in Moscow or something. I'm sure that won't be important later. In the north, we see Germany convoying themselves onto York, correctly guessing that England was gonna try and cover Eddie. Meanwhile, England tries to get Germany out of the North Sea, but Russia is working with them to hold them. And France finally gets into the English Channel, and also the Italian fleet comes and joins the party, because why not? And I mean, at this point, all the 4 fleets versus 2 fleets, and everybody's chipping in to cut England down to 1 fleet. But actually, in Italy's void, they're talking about potentially maybe turning on France. Because, I mean, look, for Italy, who cares if England has 2 fleets? They're all the way up here, we're in the south here. It doesn't matter. If we can kill France, there's 1 less neighbor to worry about, really. But France actually has a trick up their own sleeve, because at this point Italy is telling people, okay, I'm gonna go Portugal, I'm gonna go take Portugal because I mean you don't really need my help in England anymore, so I'm just gonna take this free supply center, because also France isn't really in the position to stop them. It's just a center, he goes in, he goes out, and France goes, yeah, that's fine, you're helping us with England, so you might as well take Portugal. Boom. He gets trapped in Portugal. Let's go to the south first, because this is the exciting part. In the south, nothing ever happened. I mean, something did happen, to be fair. Austria manages to kick Russia out of Greece, and Turkey walks into Bulgaria as a result of that. I mean, they were also supporting themselves in. Austria here prioritized kicking out Greece. Nothing happens in Galicia, because Austria tries to support Italy out, but they were support holding. Italy didn't really care about killing Austria, okay? For Italy, the point was to just be in as many places as possible, because if you're ratting around everywhere, then you can't kill them, right? Because there are too many, like, the units are all spread out. Here they self-bounce in York so that York can't do anything. And they cut North Sea as well, and it works out, because nothing ever happens, and nothing happened. So here we see Italy is stuck. France doesn't even pretend at this point, they just go, sorry, I'm doing this, have fun, good luck. Portugal gets brutally executed, and Italy is the first country to lose an army, or technically a fleet, but you get what I'm saying. Over here they go down to cover Naples. Italy now has no fleet, so they're basically land power at this point. Over here you see bounce in Bulgaria. Bulgaria goes down, gets Greece with full support. Austria tries to support Italy again, but at this point Italy doesn't care. You got bigger problems to worry about. In the north, things are slowly moving. They kick them out of Holland, but Holland just going to retreat to Belgium, right? Fall 1904, the coalition continues to move against England and continues to fail to land anywhere important, because London manages to cut the North Sea, killing the supports. They bounce at Liverpool, so nothing moves forward. Also, Holland just stays in Holland, letting the English fleet get into Kiel. Germany doesn't care about losing their home centers, to be honest. They just want, as long as they have 3 centers, anywhere on the board is fine. Because due to the nature of no builds, home supply centers don't really matter. Italy uses this opportunity to go into Munich, but you can see actually looking at this board, Germany, although they still have 4 centers and are technically fine, they are under significant risk of not being fine. All you need is for And Italy to take Berlin, France to take Munich, and France has shown previously they are willing to stab people in the back to kill their units. For the end of 1904, the legally distinct country rankings, what do I think? So, I'd still put Russia in the best position here, because they have no active threats, and they're in a position where they are needed for the coalition to kill England, so I'd keep them at the top. Second, I think I'd put France now, because the Italian threat is gone. Goodbye, Germany. And you could even argue that they're first, because they have no active threats. And because Russia has the fleet in North Sea which could tankily attack Norway, and they're kind of stuck with their armies in Austria. France has full maneuverability. They've just taken off an army out of Portugal. So actually I'd switch them around. I think Russia is second best here. Now third best is a bit more difficult. Probably Turkey or Italy. I put Turkey in third here. I think Italy knocks off the leaderboard. And then for the toxic race you got, I mean, it has to still be England, right? Because they have now an army in York, an enemy army in York. They got threats on Liverpool, threats on Edinburgh. And they do have the fleet in Kiel, which can dot around a bit. But I don't think it'll last too long. So Germany moves into Kiel. Kiel goes up to Denmark. Now Germany actually gives France a go-ahead. Okay, fine, take Munich. I can't get it back anyway, so I don't really care. Now actually the plan here was that Russia would go down into Edinburgh, then the Edinburgh army would be forced to retreat to Clyde, and then in Clyde we could kill it. But actually Russia goes, you know what, nah. I don't care. Like, why are we killing England? Like, what's the point in killing the army? I thought the point was we're killing the fleet. And also, I don't want my fleet to go too far away from my homeland, because I do need to defend myself at some point. And so that's why they ultimately go into Norway, betraying the coalition, and England gets to live another day. So Germany moves into Kiel. Kiel goes up to Denmark. Now, Germany actually gives France a go-ahead. Okay, fine, take Munich. I can't get it back anyway, so I don't really care. Within the Russian leadership, there was some questions about this. We thought England was our enemy. Why are we betraying all of our international partners? We need a revolution. And so in a great revolution, Russia gets a replacement. The new Russian leader. It was actually came from France. You remember the French guy who ran to Moscow? Well, actually, when the revolution happened and the old leader was kicked out, this new guy was a big part of the revolution and took over. So now, actually, the previous French player is now in charge of Russia. In the south, we see Turkey push through into Serbia with Russian help, and we see Russia take Tunis. This is the end of Austria. So Italy just throws Austria boats and says, hey, do you want to spot into Munich? And then Austria goes, yeah, sure, we're gonna die anyway, let's do it. So they get spotted into Munich. In the meantime, the Russian fleet tries to make the journey back to Moscow. However, unfortunately, the crew just wasn't willing to do that, and so there was a bit of a mutiny, and so they stayed in Tunis. In the north, you see kind of the same thing happens as before. England goes into the North Sea. This time, however, Germany manages to get into London, taking the English dot here, and England leaves Denmark, meaning they now are officially disbanded. Also, Austria has to disband because they've lost their entire homeland. They only have one dot remaining. And so we see the first winter phase of the game, and then for some reason, everybody waived their builds, except for the people who had to disband. England disbands their army in Edinburgh, deciding my two fleets, because at this point everybody's like, look man, just destroy the two fleets. But I think, to be fair, strategically speaking, like, these fleets are your most powerful asset, because no single country can contest them. This army was gonna die sooner or later because of all of the surrounding business. Austria destroys Munich and the Eastern Mediterranean, deciding this Galicia got much more dotting ability. So here, the plan was to just finish off England once and for all. You can see the Norwegian sea spots York into Edinburgh, which would have killed England with the North Atlantic Ocean going to Liverpool. And there was some miscommunication. Germany said, hey, can you spot me into the North Sea? Because, I mean, probably they just retreat into one of my centers because they hate me more. But Russia came back quite late in the phase, saying, no, I don't want to risk it. Can't you just take Edinburgh? And then Germany wasn't around to answer that, so they put in the order, but nothing ever happened. Russia's just kind of chasing down this Austrian rat, trying to take all of their centers. Meanwhile, Italy also wants St. Petersburg, because they want to get all of the corners. Italy and Austria are both ready to rat Austria together. Rat Austria? Right, they're both ready to rat Germany together. Germany is going into a bit of a defensive mode, like, okay, let's not get ratted too hard, let's try and contain these people. France goes back to France because their little adventure over here is kind of pointless now. Meanwhile, Turkey moves into Venice and Naples, adding two of the Italian centers. They now control the mainland of Italy, so Italy is in danger here of going down to one center if they're not able to keep up the ratting. Russia now wants to combine their two fleets, but it's pointless having a single fleet here, especially since we're good friends with Turkey. Let's try and get our fleet fleets to coordinate. Now England's in a bit of a bind here because they're going to lose Edinburgh. There's nothing they can do. There's so many enemy units around it. Realistically, it's just going to be taken. Because England can take Brest, but over here they had to guess Portugal or Spain, and we all know Portugal did not work out well for Italy. So do they take the gamble? They do take the gamble, and the Russian fleet goes up to mid-Atlantic Ocean, trapping England inside of Portugal. Meanwhile, the English fleet goes down to Brest. In the north, Russia takes Edinburgh. The English homeland is officially no longer English. The Turkish go, you know, the Tunis to Moscow. They didn't do it because they're just bad Russians. Why don't we want to get into this action up here, so let's try and go up there. But then the crew said, no, we like our holiday in Naples. It's quite a nice place. You know, Russia is here to contain the ratting of their homeland. They support themselves up into Ukraine. Italy goes into Livonia to get into St. Petersburg. Austria advances into Moscow. If you're going to rat Russia, you might as well go for the capital. Welcome to the end of 1906 legally distinct country rankings. So, looking at the map, basically everyone is troubled. France, they have two British fleets kind of in their centers, mucking about. Russia is also having their own rat problems, and honestly, the French rat problems, they feel like they're going to be short term because England doesn't have much more. But Russia has two rats in their homeland, which will become more of a problem later. Undisputed, number one is going to have to be Turkey. Turkey has definitely gotten their promotion to the top. The question now is what's happening in the rest of the land. I think Austria hangs there now. They have one center and they are surrounded, while England has two units in their fleet, which is also less likely to be counted because it requires countries working together to fight. You gotta remember that the home supply centers don't matter, because although Germany has lost two of their home supply centers, they are in a good coordinated position. They're not reliant on anyone to stay alive, I feel like, and they have the opportunity to expand into Norway and Sweden, so I think Germany is number two. For number three is a bit more of a problem, because nobody's in a good position. Russia is the one who holds the keys. France to dislodge England on their own. They could do it, but it would take a while. And they'd have to get through Russia. Yeah, I think Russia is barely in third place. They scrape into third place over France because they have the initiative. They have the ability to deny France to retake Brest and Portugal. France doesn't really have that same ability or leverage over Russia, even though Russia is about to get reacted. England can just support themselves into the Mid-Atlantic Ocean. And if we go in with Mid-Atlantic Ocean, that bounces. If we go in with Spain, I mean, yeah, sure, I take Portugal, but nothing really, it doesn't matter. France decides to go into Gascony, and England gets themselves out. Russia did want to go with the plan to get France into Portugal, because then, I mean, they'd lose that supply center, and you can't really get any new supply centers within the year. But France didn't feel that was a priority. You know, everybody leaves England now. I mean, we've conquered it, so there's nothing here. It's just a bunch of grass and forest, so let's just leave. Germany goes into Norway with consent from Russia, because Russia really wants to contain these rats now. I mean, it's becoming a bit of a problem. Half of their land is just covered with just random units, because you can't even get rid of them, because if Warsaw supports Ukraine into Moscow, Moscow just goes down to Sevastopol and then becomes a problem here. Italy declares St. Petersburg to be called Saint Pasta, and Russia is not having this. I mean, you gotta destroy this unit, man. So Italy supports Warsaw into Moscow while Ukraine goes to Sevastopol. This ends the Austrian Empire in Moscow. Meanwhile, Germany moves from Norway into Finland because they want to stick to the agreement here. The agreement is to destroy the Italian army and kind of help Russia be in this northern place, get some influence here. Meanwhile, Russia covers in Norway, so then they can kill St. Petersburg next turn, because there'd be nowhere to run, basically, is the plan. Here, Turkey takes the last Italian home center in Rome and moves up into Vienna, expecting Italy to dot Russia here, but it doesn't get dotted, and so Turkey gets through. Question is open whether this was on purpose, because if you're expecting to get bounced in Vienna, do you move Piedmont to Tyrolia? Russia offers North Atlantic Ocean support down to Mid-Atlantic Ocean, but France goes, it's pointless, what would it even do? Like, what's the point? I'm just going to cover Liverpool. So they cover Liverpool. And also, with Germany's support, France retakes Brest, putting England down to only one single center in Portugal. So now going to winter 1907, we say goodbye to Austria. Austria is dead. Austria is also the first to die, as Austria tends to be. So not building didn't change that fact. Meaning in this winter turn, England has to decide which fleet they're destroying. Which fleet would you destroy? Because West has a lot of open centers here, but also Mid-Atlantic Ocean is the only one in a position to defend Portugal. They destroy West. In spring 1908, Russia sends France a message saying, I'm moving now, and France doesn't want Russia to link up these fleets, so France just goes no, which is partially why I believe they didn't take the support down in the previous turn, because I think they wanted to be in a position where they could block Russia from re-merging their fleets. Because at this stage, a major issue for France and Germany was we don't want Russia to become the new England, basically. We put in all this effort to make sure England doesn't have two fleets, so they can't dominate the ocean. But now Russia is here doing the same thing. You can see there's a bit of an effort to move St. Pasta back into Norway, Finland into Sweden, to just get this Russian fleet out. Meanwhile, Russia is moving to retake St. Petersburg, but it doesn't matter because Galicia is going to Romania. And actually, I couldn't find any discussion here about Turkey taking Budapest, whether it was banned or not. But at this point, Russia didn't feel stabbed, so there must have been something somewhere about, okay, you can take Budapest to try and bounce Italy out. I don't know, I couldn't find it, so I can't confirm nor deny that. Turkey moves on from Budapest to take Romania, as Romania walks into Sevastopol behind the Russian lines. The Norway tries to go back to St. Pasta to recapture it. However, unfortunately, the Russian army is just too strong and they retake it. Meanwhile, Germany just takes Sweden for fun. And Russia just takes Denmark. Because at this point, Germany is also regretting going into Scandinavia because, I mean, they went in without much thought. They were like, okay, we'll just help. So what's this German unit doing here? They're not getting any out of it. So at the end of the day, Germany just decides, okay, I'm just going to hold in Sweden and stab Russia here. You know, in the south, France just kind of cleans up the remains of England, going into Portugal, but England walks straight into Spain after him, so nothing ever happened. So, end of 1908. I think Turkey is definitely still up there, #1 position. In fact, they've risen arguably. I think also France has risen up. Now, they do have the Turkish unit in France, but they have mostly dealt with the English issue, and by the end of the year, if they wanted to, England would be dead. Russia is not in the top 3 anymore, by any means. I think probably 3rd place. I mean, Russia technically could be, because they do have options, but I think France just has slightly more options. Except the Turkish unit is there in Paris and Marseille. So I think if the Turkish unit wasn't there, then 100% France would be 3rd. But I think Russia just about scrapes in there, because also they have a position where Turkey is going to help them kill Italy. I think actually Russia scrapes the 3rd place. Just by a margin though. I think France is definitely sitting there looking up, ready to pounce. Also, I don't think it needs to be said, but England is in the worst position. They have only 1 unit in a province which they can't really defend. St. Pasta is officially renamed to St. Petersburg as the Russians control it again. England can't do anything, they're literally stuck here unless they want to give up Spain. France is just waiting for fall, because if they do this now in spring, then it just continues to the Mid-Atlantic Ocean, and then there's Brest. Turkey takes this opportunity to take Budapest and Tunisia. At this point, they're going for the solo. So they go up +3 in Budapest, Munich, and Tunisia. Meanwhile, nothing happens in the north because Germany is not helping kill the Italians anymore. They just go down and retake Denmark from Russia. This is a major issue for Russia. At this point, everybody's betrayed them. They've been betrayed by Germany, they've been betrayed by Turkey, and France is definitely not helping them. What's Russia to do here? Looking at the map, Russia comes to an agreement with Turkey. Okay, I don't like the fact that you stabbed me, but at this point, Russia just wants to kill Italy. And also England, but I think England's more of a side tangent. They are saying, okay, Turkey, I'll throw to you, but just kill Italy first. Kill Italy, and then we're good. And then I'll help you win. So Turkey goes, yeah, fine, we'll do that. So in fall 1909, England's officially dead. Russia manages to get into the Norwegian Sea. Meanwhile, Germany takes Edinburgh, takes Denmark, but they manage to kick Italy out of Norway. Now over here, Italy correctly guesses that Turkey's going to go down to Romania to try and kick them out, so they prevent that from happening. And Turkey walks through into Berlin just to get this further center, because it's going to be harder to take in the long run. Italy receives Finland, because although Germany gave them permission to go to Sweden, the alternative was that Denmark could walk up into Sweden and then they could retake Norway, and I think Italy just preferred that because they didn't want to take from the guy helping them, right? Russia is officially on 4 supply centers because Turkey took Budapest now, and at this point France is moving down very fast to stop the solo, because this is now a serious possibility. This is when Germany starts taking it a little bit seriously, because up to now Germany's like, it's impossible to solo. But once you're on 15, I think it's impossible to ignore. Germany moves up into Sweden, like they said, with Russian support actually. Because from Russia's perspective, this routine in Finland is a terrible idea. Because if Germany goes up here, then maybe Germany will help dislodge it. Because, I mean, Finland just trapped it. Like, what's the plan? They're just gonna die. Now, the south, Turkey does manage to get into Romania. You know, Italy tries to go up to Moscow, but, I mean, nothing happens. They lose Munich as well. And the German army in Edinburgh gets back into the mainland. Now, they realize the plan's not gonna work because Russia just has too many units in this area. They can spot hold Norway. They have no way of attacking St. Petersburg. So Italy just goes, hey Germany, can I move into Sweden please? And then Germany goes, yeah, fine, why not? Meanwhile, Italy sees the writing on the wall. I mean, at the end of the day, they wanted Ankara anyway, so they get Smyrna, so they go down into Armenia to get their third corner. France and Turkey have a little conversation. They're like, look, France is like, look, I'm not gonna let you solo. Like, this is very stuck. I'm just gonna self-ban in Spain forever, and you can't do anything. And so Turkey goes, oh yeah, you're gonna self-ban to Spain forever? Let me support Marseille to Spain, so you can't bounce in Spain forever. Though France ends up in Spain when they didn't intend to be in Spain, which kind of creates an opening for Turkey, because now it's not so easy for France to get into Piedmont and get into the Turkish backline. Now, in the winter turn, because of course Italy only has one supply center now, they decide ultimately, this Sweden, I mean, it was fun while it lasted, but it's not gonna last. So let's just destroy this and take the Turkish centers to stay alive. And if I keep the Sweden units, Turkey's probably gonna solo. Okay, end of 1910, I think, okay, Turkey is definitely still number one place, and I think France is now clear second. Oh, it could be Germany. Okay, never mind, they're not clear second. Russia has been kicked off their throne because the units can coordinate, but I don't think they're in any position to do much more with it. I think France does get the slight edge over Germany because they have no foreign threats to worry about, other than the Turkish fleet, but it's only a single fleet. Meanwhile, Germany has to deal with the St. Petersburg army, maybe, but also the two Russian fleets. And now, third place is a close race between Germany and Russia, and I think Germany edges out here because Germany looks like they're more in a position to grow, while Russia's more in a position... I mean, they're in a good position to defend themselves, don't get me wrong. I think Germany has more opportunities. But still looking, there's a chance. England joins Austria in the pit, and Italy takes their place. Spring 1911, Russia takes Sweden, and Italy goes and hides in Anatolia. Over here they have a little confrontation, nothing happens, Spain holds, Germany and France kick Turkey out of Munich. And at this point, I think Turkey goes, okay, fine, I'm losing. Looking at this position, there's no way for Turkey to solo anymore. Ultimately, they concede, okay, yeah, fine, I'll draw. But you might notice that the game continues because Italy is not dead and Russia is not letting Italy survive this game. Italy has basically ruined the game for Russia. Like, Russia was in a good position, then they started getting dotted. Russia goes, I'm not drawing until Italy is dead. Italy will not make it to the draw. In the end, the game continues, and Turkey slowly walks over Sevastopol and Ankara bounce in Armenia as Italy successfully guesses that the Russian army is going to go to Armenia to try and kick them out. Spain tries to bounce Bulgaria and Constantinople, but unfortunately the army goes mutiny and goes, look, we're a bit tired, man, we don't want to walk across Europe. Bulgaria gets into Constantinople. Russia tries again to get into Armenia, but Italy guesses correct again. And then in fall 1912, the Russian leadership, they missed their orders, and since this was their second time missing orders, the country goes into a bit of civil disorder, and they just decide, okay, you know what, fine, let's just draw. Going in, I think I expected there to be more destroying of people's armies by, like, surrounding them, working together to surround them. Do I think a solo is possible? Because there was some debate afterwards about whether a solo is actually possible in this game mode, and I think it is. I think if you let the game run long enough, and because over time people lose armies. If France had lost one of their armies early in the game, then maybe they wouldn't have been able to stop Turkey from moving up here, and Germany would be too distracted in the north, so he could have gotten that solo off. Here it is, the end states.